Moving along down our main menu bar, we're now going to take a look at the Assets menu. Now, starting off from the top, we have re-import. This is going to allow us to take any selected asset and re-import it if we've made any changes to it. So like if we have a texture that maybe we've updated inside of Photoshop and we've saved it in Photoshop, we need to re-import that so that the new version of it gets associated with our project.
Right. Unity, by default, if you work on any asset inside of the asset folder in the folder structure, if you make changes to it and save it, the next time you come back to Unity, Unity usually will update that automatically and re-import the file. Every once in a while, something will hiccup and you won't see your changes. If that's the case, you can select that asset, hit re-import, and that should refresh it to its new version.
Right, it's just kind of a way to force that update to take place. Now you can also create things in here as well. So we could create a folder that will go into our project. We could create JavaScript, C# scripts, and so on. We can create materials, cube maps, all kinds of things. I'm not going to go into what one of each these are, but we can create them to put them into our level. That's the whole idea. Now we can also show our project or any of our assets inside the Explorer. Now if you click this, what it's going to do is open up a window in your operating system that shows you your project. Now, it opened that off screen for us on another monitor, but here's the window that it opened up, and this is actually our project location.
Right, that's the top level of our project. If you look and see that assets folder, that's actually the folder where all of our assets that you see inside of the project view actually live.
As a matter of fact, if I kind of close things up to clean up the view, and then we open that window back up, you can see everything corresponds. We have audio, MyFBX, scenes, standard assets, terrains, and terrain toolkit. Right. Exactly what we see here inside the project view.
Now if you...
I can just bring it right back. No problem at all.
I was going to show a couple of other things while we had this open. If you back up one more... Or, hold on, you're already at the top level. All right. If you remember us mentioning in previous videos that the project is, or the project view is like your library. We actually have a folder called library. That library is the metadata that Unity uses to keep track of what assets are associated with what other assets. So it is actually a library.
Cool.
Now, the other folder that you see is snowworld_data, and you see a snowworld.exe. If you remember in, I believe it was 2 videos ago where we showed you the build and run.
That's located under the file menu.
Exactly. These are the file and the folder that it created when it made our executable version. The temp folder is just that. It's a temporary folder that Unity puts stuff while it's running as you're working inside of your scene.
Nice. So let's go ahead and close all of this out, and we'll move back over to our Assets menu. We can open various assets as well as delete them. Now I'll give a quick example of that. If we step inside, here I have the camp diffuse texture. This is the actual texture that we've applied to our tent and to our entire camp scene. If we come under Assets and click on Open, it'll open that up.
Right,
now,
and it's going to open up using whatever you've set up in preferences to be the default program to open that up.
Right.
So you can actually change that if you have Photoshop for instance.
If we go under Edit and jump over to Preferences, just to show this, we have the external script editor and we have the image application, which is currently set to open by file extension. So on this machine, PNGs are just set to automatically open the little viewer from Windows.
Right.
We could just as easily set this to Photoshop by browsing for the Photoshop executable, and then when we click that open button inside the Assets menu, it'll automatically open it up in Photoshop.
It's a really handy trick.
Now down from here we have delete. It's pretty obvious what that's going to do, just allow you to delete objects. We can import a new asset. So if we have something like a texture or 3D model or a sound effect or any other type of asset we need to bring into our game, this is where we can open up a window, browse for it, and bring it into Unity. Of course, dragging and dropping into your project view will work just as well. So either way you want to do that is fine. Next we have refresh. If we've made any changes to the project view that for any reason we're not seeing, we can click refresh, and that'll update all of those for us and make sure that we can see all those. We can import packages, and we've already, if you did follow along with the creation of our level, you saw this a couple of times, you can either download or have saved out or already have, along with the installation of Unity, various packages of assets and game objects and prefabs and whatnot that you can load in at any given time by using this. You can go to import package and bring those in. Alternatively, if you have a collection of objects that you'd like to save for later, or maybe just kind of clump together and hand off to somebody else to use. You can also export out your own packages, and really that's as easy as just selecting all of the various things here inside your project file or project view that you'd like to export out. Say, for instance, we wanted to send out all of our FBX and all of our audio stuff for another artist to use. We can just go under Assets and now export that out as a package. You'll get a little window saying, hey, you'd like to export all of this stuff? Just kind of a checklist to make sure that's what you want. Click Export, and it'll give you a window where you can decide where all that's going to be saved. That turns into a Unity package that somebody else could load up into their Unity.
Right, and it's a fairly intelligent exporter. So what it'll do is, if you have prefabs that have textures that are being referenced in different folders, scripts and yet other folders, you can just select that prefab and it will go through and look through all of its metadata that's saved in that library folder and figure out what's associated that you actually need when you make that export, and it'll add all those files in with it.
Extremely handy. Now moving on down underneath the Assets menu, we can select the dependencies for any given asset. So let me show you how this works. If I grab our camp material, so this is the material that's actually applied to all of our surfaces here, and then we come down under Assets and choose Select Dependencies, you'll notice it also selects our camp diffuse texture, which is the texture that this material is dependent upon. So that's how that actually works. Now moving down, we can export a compressed audio file, which I'm not actually going to do, but if we select an audio file, any of these files you bring in are generally going to be compressed when they're brought in to save space. If for some reason you want that compressed audio file to do something with it, well, this is where you could export it out potentially. You can re-import all of the various assets in your project. Now this is you'll even get a really cool warning when you click on this. It says, are you sure? It's basically what it says is that this is something you only do if you're experiencing problems, because this could take quite a while, and it even reminds you, hey, if you need to do this, you should probably be submitting a bug report. So this is not something you should find yourself doing very often. And then finally, we can sync the mono-develop project, which kind of jumps over into the scripting world. So Lee, what is this actually going to do?
All right, what we are doing is, when you're working with scripting, you'll want to use an editor to actually write your scripts. Unity ships with Unisite, which is built in. It's an open source editor that you can use, but it also supports, especially if you're using C# scripts, mono-develop, which is also an open source IDE for developing C# scripts. You can also use Visual Studio, and what this does is it builds a package that you can use in either mono-develop or inside of Visual Studio that keeps track of all of your scripts and allows you to work in those IDEs and go back and forth between that programming environment and the Unity environment for building your games.
Which means, as you're following along with several of our other videos that 3D Buzz has put forward, especially over scripting using C#, you'll be using this option a lot more.
Right. Usually, once you start off a new project and you put your first script in, you build it out once, and usually that works just fine. You never have to do it again. If you run into problems every once in a while, if you drag in scripts from a new source, sometimes you have to rerun this.
It's just like the rest of the project folder, where usually it will update automatically as soon as it detects a change. But if for any reason you need to force an update, this is how you do it. So that is a look at the entirety of the Assets menu, which is going to wrap things up for this video. Thank you.